talked a lot about space in these videos, and I'm still thinking about space, and I'm kind of thinking that you know, how we as an embodied consciousness kind of occupy space and the variations on that. I mean, certainly the way I'm occupying space at the moment, right this moment, is I'm standing in the middle of it, or what appears to be the middle of it. Certainly the visual experience, and to a certain extent the auditory experience I'm having, is of being at the centre of a large disc with a dome over my head, with large objects close to me and small objects far away from me, and the objects that are close to me are occluding the ones behind me, behind them. So that's a kind of phenomenological experience of space that I'm having, and it has implications for this kind of vertical dimension I'm standing in as well. So that's certainly one way of occupying space. Another way of occupying space is the one that I'm doing now, which is to not be stationary within it, but to walk through it. And this particular walk that I'm on, I'm walking my dogs. I'm sort of walking up towards the canal here, so I've got a trajectory, a path through it that is kind of preordained, and I know where I've been. So as I'm walking through space, this spatial, I can't get my head around this at all, but the space that I'm occupying, alongside perhaps that other space I just talked about, is also a kind of, it's a trajectory or a path, it's a kind of line, that channel that I'm moving along, which marks out my route from where I've been to where I'm going, is kind of accentuates that dimensionality, that single dimension of my path. So there's that going on for me, and I think that has that kind of occupation of space, walking along a path from a source to a goal, has also different kinds of inferences alongside it, different entailments. So the visual field that I'm experiencing as I'm walking is one of flow. The optical flow is moving past me. Objects are increasing in size as I move towards them, or appear to be, and then they kind of pass me by. So I'm having that different kind of experience, and that's the second kind of way of occupying space. A third way that I'm not doing now, although I suppose I could, is to take myself off the path and wander more freely in space. It's quite hard to do actually, because I know where I'm going. I know I have to be back home in not too many minutes, because I've got to sort the kids out. But in theory I could be kind of just aimlessly wandering. It could be a flaneur or a derive, a piece of a psychogeographic occupation of space where I'm just kind of wandering through it. So it has those qualities of optical flow, it has those perceptual characteristics in which objects loom and then pass one by, disappear into the darkness behind one's head, that kind of thing, but doesn't have the fixity of that stationary phenomenal space, and doesn't have the accentuated channel of the path that one is walking along. So that's a kind of, I'm not quite sure what the difference in that space is, but that feels quite different to be in that kind of ambling space rather than a space which has a goal at the end of it. So that's the third occupation of space. And the fourth occupation of space is one I can't really experience directly. I guess I kind of can, but not purely on the sensory motor level, which is that kind of imagining oneself into other parts of space. There's a woman with a dog on the other side of the canal here, and the fact that I can see her and I know she can see me is kind of duplicating my viewpoint, or reproducing the potential viewpoints, or at least into at least one of the locations in space. So that phenomenological space that I talked about, in which I'm standing at the centre and things are kind of receding in size as they move away from me, doesn't sustain in this kind of multiple viewpointed space. If you kind of imagine that eyes are everywhere and kind of posit oneself into that kind of space, it's a space of empirical objectivity, I guess, a kind of scientific space ultimately, but also a kind of, I hesitate to say the words, kind of a theological space. It seems to be the kind of space that Aquinas was talking about when he talks about the corporeal and something else, and then the intellectual realm of perception and memory. It's that kind of space where seeing is everywhere, or it's pure shusness. There's no central access to experience. It's more kind of panpsychic, and that's a very different occupation of space. Okay, so those are the four ways of imagining space, and I'm talking about physical space here. Those are the four ways of imagining space occupying. There's probably more. A stationary, centered, pretty solipsistic, semi-subjective, phenomenological space, a space of motion from a source through a path to a goal, that kind of linear space, the ambling space in which one's viewpoint is constantly, it's still a singular viewpoint, it's constantly changing and subject to flows and recursive loops and all those kind of things. And then this fourth one is this kind of omniscient space, or multiple viewpointed space of empiricism, I suppose. And what I'm thinking about there is if those are the kind of physical experiences which one can sort of get just by walking across a field. They're sensory motor experiences, ultimately, except possibly the last, which is still kind of sensory motor, although it's built on, well, no, who knows. They are kind of sensory motor. Then presumably those are the kind of spaces that one would find crossing over into spatial metaphors, and particular spatial metaphors of different kinds of knowing, which I've talked about before. So the omniscient space of the omnipresent eye everywhere, and panpsychic space, would be representative of a striving for knowledge which is empirical and objective, and not viewpointed. And conversely, that phenomenological space that I mentioned at the beginning would be highly situated, highly subjective, highly individual, potentially. Virtue space, I'm not so sure about, I need to think about that. Well, actually the second one, linear space, I guess, could be conceived of as a kind of knowledge gathering, in which one moves through space, one proceeds and becomes, enters another space that one started out from, with that different space representing a different knowledge, hence an increase of knowledge. So you'd move through along a course to arrive at a point of graduation when one has acquired different viewpoints. Yeah.